Okay, so a while back I purchased and started building and painting the Warcry Red Harvest terrain, and at the time I had made a mistake in my spray painting and I forgot to mask off and paint a couple of the columns. So I have actually gone back and I have fixed that and recorded a video of it so I can show you how I did it. So without further ado, here we go. Alright, so these are the paints that I used to recreate the teal effect from the sage spray that I used. Now it's not a 100% exact match, but it's close enough. To your eye, to a human eye, it's going to be fine. To the camera though, the camera can pick up just a subtle difference, and I could probably fix that by adding in a little more of the green, but I'm actually fine with it the way it is because honestly, you're not going to notice. So the first thing I did is I mixed up some of that teal and I used it to fix a lot of the brown overspray from the matte coffee bean that I used to spray the rest of this. Now, if you remember, the matte coffee bean is actually something I was using to fix a certain color in place for a lot of this stuff, just to give it a good base coat. I like to start with a color that I'm going to be using primarily on the models when it comes to terrain. With miniatures, I usually will just use a black or even wraithbone, gray seer. It depends on what techniques I'm using. Now for this case, since it's terrain, I painted the walls a sage. I believe it's called mountain sage. I got it from Walmart. And then I used the Krylon matte coffee bean for all of the other parts, including the metallics and the wood. And the reason why I used it on the metallics is because I want the metal to look dingy, because this is, you know, terrain for the 8 points. This is terrain for Warcry. It's not going to look nice and pretty and shiny. It's going to look used and dinged up and, you know, just generally crappy looking. So it doesn't matter if there are a couple of places you miss, or there's a place with a little bit too much wash on it, you know, and especially for the metals, I actually let a lot of that brown show through to make it look like this stuff is completely war-torn. Because obviously the different war bands are fighting over everything in the 8 points. They're fighting over Varanite, they're fighting over, you know, whatever they find. It's just fighting, you know, it's Warhammer for a reason. Now, once I was done doing the touch-ups on the teal parts, I went back and I started mixing up different shades of brown to see what fit the best. I tried Army Painter Oak Brown. I tried mixing in some different browns, like some Saddle Brown and whatnot. I tried Werewolf Fur. What I ended up using actually was completely off the beaten path. I ended up using Reaper's Ebony Flesh because once it dries, it actually looks a lot like the matte coffee bean. So that's what I ended up using to touch up all of the places of wood that had gotten teal paint on them, that had not been completely primed all the way. And in some cases, I actually mixed the other browns in there just to give it a little bit of variation, because, I mean, you know, the wood is going to be just as messed up as everything else. So that's, you know, easy enough. All right, so I started off using a makeup brush to try and get the saddle brown dry brush on this, and I ended up using. I did use this for the most part, but I also brought out my smaller dry brush later and did a couple of, just a couple of oddball spots that hadn't been dry brushed properly. This step was fairly easy. Using a cheap makeup brush like this is not only economical for your wallet, but it's usually pretty quick and it functions just like any other dry brush would. The rest of this, actually, I ended up just using regular metallics. I used a lot of lead belcher, and I used gray seer to do the Veronite, and then Aethermatic blue contrast to do the oddball glow. And that's it. That's pretty much all I did for this terrain. It's quick and simple. So I would like to thank all of you for watching, and hopefully you found something here that is helpful. Make sure to like and subscribe. Join me on Discord, join me on Instagram, and hit the bell button if you want to see my next video when it comes out. Like I said, thank you all. I appreciate the watching.